Okay, this is a stamp along video here on how to do, for lack of a better description, I call this a split fountain. It's what we used to call, doing these transitions of color when we used to do silk screening back in high school days. But it's just kind of keeping your colors separate. I've laid down colors like this before in other scenes, but I might have that pink right here all the way going from the edge of the page down, okay? And maybe even yellows or something like that, like in the last stamp along video. But on this one I keep things separated by just going for kind of this horizon glow. Now in this scene right here I knew I was going to do a reflection type of scenario, so I kind of did the same things going down here as I did going up here. But this is a way to keep your colors a little bit more pure, okay? We have a yellow band right here, transitioning into the pink, where the yellow overlaps the pink and vice versa. We have this little transition area of orange, where the pink is laid down right here. We have some blues up here, but the blues and pinks overlap each other, and we have that transition zone of violet, okay? Because dye-based inks are transparent, so the colors underneath will always kind of influence the colors that you lay down above them, provided the colors above are also transparent. But this is a fun way to work, and as I mentioned in the video, you can also do these types of things with brayering. You just get different colors in brayer, and then you lay it down, then you have this, nice, beautiful, really smooth a transition of tones depending on what colors you've applied to that brayer. But in this one right here, the one thing about working kind of in this format of doing things manually is you have a little bit more control over, kind of the transitions like here of having darker edges. I could put in some streaks here and there, especially like down here in the water. You can see things that got a little bit more streaky, okay? And that's using your brush sponge applicators and just putting these streaks across there like that, where like a brayer it would be just completely smooth. And I like both, each brayer is great because you can come up with something, an instant background. And while this one takes a little bit more time, it's still easy, but there's a little bit more control over your placement of color and how much you lay down. And kind of, like I said, those little effects of, as far as like streakiness or something like that, some irregularity if you want it. And that irregularity leads to variation. So anyways, if you choose to kind of stamp along with this video, I hope you enjoy the process. And the one thing that I would say to look out for is I started off with this yellow in here, okay? And then what you want to do is, instead of having a really solid bar of yellow just completely saturated, what you want it is in each one of these different colors, okay, yellow, pink, blue, you want to have kind of a solid area of yellow, but then you kind of want to go with a little bit of a drier version as it moves away from that center. So I go a little bit drier below and a little bit drier above. That way it's lighter, so that when you lay down the next color layer, in this case it's pink, you won't just have these harsh, solid lines. They'll transition into one another nice and gracefully because you have a solid area of pink right here, but then I have kind of a drier area of pink down below, and that transitions into the yellow. Same thing happening up here, solid yellow, pink. Put a few swipes in here of a drier pink on your sponge applicator, and that will transition off, and then it'll transition in to your next color. In this case it was blue. And same thing, when I start applying this blue in here, I kind of streak a little bit of it down into that pink, okay? But I don't take it all the way through it, so I still retain the pure yellow, pink, and blue here. If that makes sense, okay? I explained it again when we get into it, though. And that's the things to kind of look out for as far as this scene goes, or as far as that type of background goes. So anyways, hope you have fun, and if you have any questions, as always, just drop us a note in the comment section and I'll try to get back with you. Okay, we're going to do a stamp along here and we'll try to make this one quick. I was just thinking about a certain look for things like sunrise and sunset scenes, and kind of a different way to achieve them. This isn't something that's terribly new or anything, but I don't think I've done it in a video before. But I've done a recent scene that was kind of like a sunrise or a sunset, maybe more of a sunset. But you have kind of universal tones run under everything, like a yellow, then orange and red, and I think I went into brown as well. But on this one here, I want to keep things a little bit different, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a transition. And they do this in a lot of kind of brayering, couldn't think of the word, brayering techniques, where you just kind of add some different colors to a brayer and then you run over your scene and you get this transition, and those look fantastic. But I'm going to do this one kind of manual, so I have a little bit more control over where I place certain tones, okay? And on this one, I think we'll go for something like this, okay? Maybe something like this, okay? So what we have is some warm tones. It'll transition into kind of an orange because pink and yellow mix to form orange. Actually, I'm looking at this mustard seed now. I'm not sure about this one. Maybe I'll go with more of a neutral, yellow like this one. Okay, and hopefully I get these nice transitions going from yellow into orange to pink, and then the pinks, where they overlap into the blues, will form some kind of violet. Okay, now just for, I don't know, just to make things a little bit interesting, and by the way, I mean, I have these different tones down here. You can see there's a Memento that's very similar to this Marvy blue. I can use one or the other. There's things like this Memento blue here. Basically, you can choose any pad line, okay? Just pick out some kind of a lighter pink, preferably for this one, in terms of the value, and just some sort of neutral yellow. A lot of us have those same colors in our repertoire. You don't have to use these colors, but what I do is I just kind of make things somewhat visual, and I look at these pads, and if they kind of blend to your eye, then they should blend just fine. Let's say I took these Mementos, and here's a yellow transition into a yellow-green, to a darker green. Make things visual, and you can see that if they blend to your eye in terms of however way they designate the the colors of the pads, put them up, and just take a look at them and see if it looks like a natural kind of transition from one color to the next. And if it does, the chances are it should just blend fine, in terms of your usage of them going from one color to the next. That's one of the things that I always used to do in my workshops. That's we had everyone kind of lay out their colors before they kind of went in with their color layering. Okay, light pressure. Okay. Now what this is going to represent here in this scene is we're going to do kind of a transition going from kind of a horizon into the sky. But on this one we'll use a Lakeside Cove, and that will hopefully in the end look like a nice reflection where that that little bit of warmth will be coming up from behind the horizon, okay? So in doing that, then it allows us to do kind of a similar thing in both the surface, in this case it'll be water, and sky, okay? It allows us to transition two directions instead of just one, okay? But you can do it however you want, and you don't have to do a kind of a reflective type of situation here. Okay, there's a lot of yellow in that pad. Let's move over to the pink, okay? And I'm running this pink into that yellow a little bit, okay? Don't go all the way into it. But have it kind of transition, so I'm probably going about a 1/4 inch into that 1 inch band of yellow, okay? And you notice when I'm kind of going into one area of the card, I'll flip the card around so that I can go in with this nice kind of ergonomic motion. Okay, now here's the thing. Don't just have a solid band of each color that you're using. Kind of go into the yellow a little bit more from each direction as this tip becomes dry. That way you'll have a nice transition of that, you know, that pink into that yellow. So it's not just a solid band of, you know, an equal portion of that pink, okay? And if you don't understand what I just said there, it means that as this moves into that pink a little bit more, you want to have a drier tip right here, so that it kind of transitions in there and it fades off into that center of that yellow like that, okay? And because this pink is going to transition into the next pink, you can also kind of transition it up the other way. Let's see if I can get that. Okay, so it's a little bit, see this, it's solid in the center, and then as it moves up that way and down this way, it's lighter because I'm going with a drier touch on the band. So if this was your band of whatever color, you want it kind of lighter and lighter down there, okay? So it's solid right in here and lighter, lighter, okay? And that's what you're going to do with all your colors, okay? So that they transition into the next color nice and gracefully. Okay, this is a rose pink here. Do I want to use that one? That's a little bit of a warm pink. I tell you what, I'm going to skip it. Now, let's try... I happen to have this orchid, which is kind of a pale violet. Let me use a little bit of that. Okay. If you have a pale violet, go ahead and use that one. If you don't, pink and blue kind of overlap to form a violet, okay? All right, so here's the thing that I'm doing. Normally I stick with the same tip if I go darker, 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 but this way I'm kind of keeping the colors a little bit more pure. So after that tip, and this was my yellow one, let me just switch to a different applicator, okay? I tell you what, let's go with the Memento, okay? Just to mix the pads and not get anyone locked into a certain brand, okay? If you have all of one brand, that's fine, but I'm just saying you don't need it. Okay, here comes the blue. And I'm being careful not to go into like the yellow with this blue. I'm going into this orchid and pink somewhat though. Okay, the Memento blue is pretty light in terms of the value. I'm going to need to go darker, okay? Which I'm kind of ready for with the Bahama blue or light blue. Okay. When we used to do this in kind of my high school graphic arts class, this type of thing was called a split fountain when we were doing silk screening. This is the salvia blue here. Okay, same thing, kind of transition it into that violet a little bit. But it's where you kind of put the different colors of ink on the silk screen, then you put the squeegee across it and you kind of blend them together a little bit, and then you screen it across, you know, so you get that that transition of colors in kind of a rainbow look. It's a really great class back in the day. Okay, let's transition into kind of a medium blue, whatever you have. Flip it around. Okay. I'm going to go into that pink a little bit on the side there, just to get a little bit more of that violet going. Careful not to take it down too far, like into that orange, though. Alright, that is the Bahama Blue. Let's try, let me go a little bit darker. Let's go with a kind of more of a navy blue. This is the number 3 blue. That's just all what they call it in Marvy. But choose any type of dark blue and kind of go on your 4 corners for that kind of nice vignette type of look. Okay. All right, something like that. Let me try something here. This is a Prussian blue. Okay, really dark blue. And also kind of easy to apply. For some reason, Prussian blue seems to be a little bit thinner for some reason than a lot of other inks. I don't know, it's something to do with the chemistry of the color or how they make it. I'm actually putting a few little streaks into the scene just for a little bit of variation. Okay, so what I do is I have this kind of on its edge, doing that type of motion. Okay. As far as like some kind of landscaping scene, I know that it might look weird to you, but hopefully it will end up looking like a, I don't know, not a realistic scene, but something not quite so crazy. Okay, I'm grabbing my black pad. I'm going to take the Lakeside Cove stamp and let me show you a little trick here. I inked up kind of all right here. I didn't ink up this bottom portion too much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of wipe some of these little areas in here away. I'm putting some streaks through some of those reflections down there, just to give it a little bit of variation in terms of the degree of I guess maybe coverage. Okay, let me just centralize this one. So what I was getting at there, when I was wiping off some of those reflections, just so you get a little bit of variation in value in those reflections, okay? It'll make, you know, it'll give, I don't know, it gives a little bit more of an illusion of kind of surface area to the impression. Okay, that, and we have these areas off to the side, so I'm gonna ink up this side, wipe it off a little bit, put those streaks down there as well. Come in here, I'm overlapping this by about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch or so, which is, you know, quite a good amount of I don't know, variable. Okay, so you can't see where one image ends and the other begins because we overlap it so much, okay? Okay, colored up this side. Wiping off a touch. Going in 1/8 to 1/4 inch, okay? All right, so we have our kind of foundation there. Now, one of the things that can make this look a little bit more complete would be adding some tone and shadows to those rocks, just to kind of anchor the scene in a little bit, okay? We have a lot of these colors running through the rocks, and I think that it would be more effective to bring in some additional tones so that they're not so kind of directly related to the color transitions in the back, okay? Because there's the color transition in those rocks, okay? So it looks like a kind of more of a window to the background. Well, we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow this to dry, set up and dry a little bit, then we'll go in and we'll tone our rocks in, okay? And we'll figure out some colors to use in there so that they're a little bit more opaque than transparent, okay? Where the colors in the background are showing right through them. And then we'll also add some additional shadows to really anchor the scene down into the setting, okay? So it doesn't look like it's floating against kind of just a, you know, transitioning background. All right, so we'll do that, and we'll add a little bit of foreground, I think, and we'll take a look at it after that, and we'll see where it needs to go from there, if any, okay? Okay, let's see. I've given this a little bit of time to dry, and it's perfectly dry and ready to apply some additional tones on here. Let's look at this as far as kind of just a setting. Okay, you have these rocks in here, and they do have shadows within the design itself. Okay, there's tone within them, but when you look at it like this, they really look kind of transparent. So let's set this image into the scene a little bit more, okay? Now we know where we know where the shadows are going to be at this point in time because we've stamped our scene into it. So what I'm going to do is I'll stick with my general color scheme, okay? And where this is blue over here, okay, in the water. Yours might be more pink or something like that if you brought the pink down more, okay? If that's the case, then maybe go with a violet or something like that. But you can also go with the blue because the blue kind of mixed with the pink will form a violet, okay? So it's up to you. I'm going to flesh these rocks in a little bit too, okay? With a little bit of tone. See, like that? You can see the difference between here and over here. Okay, I'll go darken that too, but see where I'm kind of coming up into the rock a little bit with that blue. And let's do the same thing over here. I'm just kind of going like this. This is the movement of it. Just little swipes like that, okay? And then I'm coming up into the rock a little bit. Coming into the water a little bit too. Getting the shadows darker. I want it to look as though that, you know, the Lakeside Cove is really sitting in the scene, okay? Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to get kind of the base of the rocks where they're going into the water with a little bit of this blue, okay? Do it incrementally, just take your time, okay? So you can see some of these rocks down here, the side of the rock is now darker than the top of the rock. It's because I'm hitting the side of the rock with some of this blue. It looks more violet because, you know, the pink is showing through the blue in that area. Okay. A little bit more, like that. Okay. Now, how about that area in the background? That area in the background is pink, right? As opposed to blue down here. So instead of going with blue up here, I think I'm going to just go with a darker version of pink, which would be more like some sort of violet, okay? Now, like I said, if you don't have violet, if you want to go with the blue, you can do that too, because blue overlapping that will form kind of a violet. But, let me see. Or, I don't know, there was that orchid too. Maybe I'll try that one, because I already did use it in the scene. I'm trying to just go for a real narrow application of it. Let me try to zoom in on there a little bit. And like I did on the rocks in the foreground, I'll try to do it on the background as well. I'll try to bring in a little bit of tone into those rocks, kind of on the bottom side of them, to make it look a little bit more like they're volumes, okay? They're rounded. Okay, so what we have is that. We'll do a little streak here and there. You can also do that with like a alcohol pen or something. Alright, so we have a little bit more tone in those rocks like that. So the shadows at the base of it, the shadows at the base of that. And so you just kind of come into that, you know, on an angle as opposed to doing it flat, okay? Just dab around like so. And if you don't feel comfortable about the manipulation of the angle of your tool, like I said, you can always do it with something like an alcohol-based marker or something. You can just take those, they have a much more narrow tip, and you can just color right in there. Okay, so let's add a little bit more. Maybe I'll add a little bit of this orchid into my water, kind of as a reflective hue. Okay, let me try this pale violet. Laying it down my corners just to reflect a little bit of that color of those rocks. Okay, now if you want to, you can take black, all right, and I'll add a little bit of that right at the base of the rocks, going up into the rocks slightly, okay, and going right down into my corner, bottom right corner. Okay, you can see the difference maybe between that side and this side. So this side kind of just merges right into that. And I'll try to do the same thing for over here, going up into the rocks slightly, still leaving the tops of the rocks a little bit light, you know, to create the illusion of volumes, as opposed to just a two-dimensional, you know, object. Okay, come like that. I feel that the scene is somewhat, you know, it's sitted, you know, it's set, not sitted, it's set into the kind of the background now. It's not just kind of floating over that, you know, multicolored split fountain, you know, transitional area. Okay. So that is your basic split fountain, or whatever they call it. Transitional background with foreground of reeds here. So you can do all kinds of color schemes, you know, you don't have to go with these colors. Go with some greens, maybe, for a interesting twilight. Go with whatever color, you know, scheme you like. Go with your favorite colors. Okay, so that is your basic kind of separated color transitions. Remember that thing about when you're applying it, you know, you have a solid area like this, okay, with each strip, all right? But then each color kind of, you know, kind of dissipates as it moves out. Then what you do is you come in with your next strip, and then you kind of have it fade out into this color and transition to the next one. So have it kind of drier, so solid, and then kind of dry. And that's what you have in right here in the middle of that pink. It's kind of solid, then it kind of transitions into this blue, kind of more of a solid light blue, transitions into the pink, yellow transitions into the pink from there, from below, and you get that kind of orange in between. The transition zone between the pink and the blue is that violet right there. And, you know, the opposite is kind of happening in this direction. So it's fun stuff. You know, you can pick and choose, you know, whatever color scheme you want to go with. You know, if you did this in a brayer, I think brayering is, you know, a really fantastic way to get kind of an instant background as well. But, you know, you could brayer like that and then come into it, you know, with a little bit of streaks here and there or something like that. But as far as something like this goes, you can transition, you know, as many different colors into there as you want, and kind of as thick an application as you want, you know, as opposed to brayering. Brayering, though, is awesome in terms of the speed at which you can achieve, you know, a given background. So, all kinds of different possibilities, and, you know, it kind of opens up some doors as to what types of color schemes you want to work with. I think this would be really interesting to take yellow and pink and maybe transition it up into something like a brown or something like that. I think that would be a really interesting color scheme. You know, something like heavier, earthy tone browns up here, you know. And, I mean, this being a reflection, I just did the same thing down this way, but, you know, you can always just do a standard landscape and just do this same type of thing up on your horizon for the sky. So, like I said, endless possibilities, especially with all the layering of tones and how much you use of any given one in your scene. So you can really kind of extend the kind of the visual possibilities of your existing pads with this type of blending. And I think that's really good, you know, to get the most for your money, you might say, and the most for your time, you know, in terms of how you use your existing media. So always just lay your pads out and see if they kind of transition into the other one. And if they do it, if they look like they'll transition, you know, visually, they should transition, you know, in terms of a blending process, you know, very easily and gracefully. So I always say just make things visual. They don't have to be kind of theoretical in terms of what you think will kind of go in with one another. Something like this too, you can add some water patterns or things like that, or some additional textures. If you did that in here, I would do them in colors, you know, as opposed to doing it in black. If the color in here is kind of a pale pink or something like that, maybe you put some water pattern down here in a pale pink, light blues in here and lighter blues, and then you use your water pattern out here in a darker blue where the water gets darker. So things like that. Subject matter would look really good in here as well. Birds, things in the water swimming around. So fun stuff, and that is your split fountain scene. Hope you enjoyed it.